Okay, hi guys. Hi guys. So we will be starting in 5 minutes. Definitely great to have all of you guys here. So please do share this with your friends and family, whoever who actually would benefit from knowing what coding is all about.
Just click share.
All about code. Okay. So ask us anything about coding, and today we are going to be talking about coding, and more coding. So definitely very excited to have all of you guys here. Do feel free to share. Do feel free to talk about, do feel free to ask questions as well. Okay. Hi, Daniel. It's good to have you here with us. Yes, Daniel, I know that you have a lot of questions when it comes to the coding scene. You yourself, Daniel, you are in the tech scene. So I would love to have some interesting questions from you. And, for you, these questions could enlighten a lot of people as well. So first thing first, I'm Audrey, and I'm the CEO of Next Academy. And today, the reason why we are doing this coding webinar is to help people understand more about what coding is about, right? There are so many things out there. There are so many questions that people want to ask. What can coding do? Is it even beneficial in the first place? And I think those are very good questions. So today, we have Matt Cross here talking about code. So Matt, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Matt. Originally from England. I grew up in Malaysia for more than half of my life. Previously I was working in the automotive industry in performance modifications and upgrades. And then I decided that, I didn't really love my job. And that was kind of a point where I wanted to choose a different career. So I went towards the software development route as my career. And I've been coding now for probably almost a year and a half. Yeah.
Nice. So actually what made you want to actually, dive into coding? There could be so many other things, right, aside from coding. Yeah. So what made you take the step?
So for me, I've always been someone who enjoys to see the fruits of my labor. So see things that I've built by myself. So it's kind of the same with the automotive industry. Like you see what you build with cars. Like when you touch something, you can see the end result. So I've always been pretty computer savvy. Like I've always enjoyed working on computers. So it was kind of at that point that I started to look at web design and web development as a career path to go. And then obviously looking around in the market, you notice that there's a huge abundance of jobs. Compared with a lot of industries, it's one of the highest in terms of the jobs available. So I realized it would be much easier for me to step into that career. And then another reason for it as well was due to the fact that a lot of companies nowadays, they're removing the need for a degree, especially in the software development and tech industry. So it makes it much more accessible for people to get in without having to go the university route.
Yeah. Okay, so we actually have a question from HC Wong. So HC Wong, that's for you. He asked, can we self-learn programming without college certs? What do you think? Can we self-learn programming without college certs?
I think you can. Yeah, there's plenty of resources available online. There's a lot of courses out there that are offered online through different, mediums. You can certainly learn from those ways, but obviously it depends on you yourself. If you're the kind of person that can keep yourself motivated, keep on track with the work and constantly keep trying to learn, then definitely you can learn without college certificates.
Yeah, I totally agree with Matt here. I think when it comes to self-learning, it's all about self-discipline and also all about resourcefulness. I think one of the biggest struggles that people have sometimes, I think most of us all have it, we all always want to self-learn something. And we all always, beginning of the year, you have the New Year resolution and say, I'm going to learn how to, code or something like that. And what happens is that we never get started on it in the first place. So I think those are some of the biggest struggles. Which is why I think I think at Next Academy, what we also do is that when you are actually coding in the group, you actually have peer pressure. And when your friend is coding and you get also excited seeing what he or she can do, and you also want to do the same as well. So I think that actually helps create a sense of accountability. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, like here we try not to get people to compete, but obviously, like being humans, we have that natural instinct to want to compete with other people. So I mean, it's good, especially when you're in boot camps. You know, you have people next to you that are trying to learn at the same time as well. And obviously, like people see that as a bit of a challenge. Like you want to keep on with the pace, and you don't want to fall behind. So it obviously motivates you more to try harder at the work. Yeah.
Okay, H.C. Wong actually asked also, what do you think of Stack Overflow? So for what is Stack Overflow in the first place is that in the programming world, there is this, I guess, kind of like a forum where a lot of coders out there will ask questions, and a lot of people would also provide the solutions to those codes. So what happens then in the coding world is that a lot of people go to Stack Overflow and copy and paste code and call themselves a coder. So what do you think of those things?
Yeah, so obviously Stack Overflow is amazing. Like it's a great place to find answers to questions. Like it's 99% chance of finding the answer to your question on there. But the important thing is, obviously, one thing is to be careful of some of the answers on their site will still pop up quite high in the searches, even though they may be slightly outdated. Like obviously with programming, things move very quickly, technology changes. So you just need to be aware that what you're reading is the latest thing or not. Secondly is, obviously try not to copy and post. Like while people are providing you with an answer, the key thing is to understand what they're giving you and not just simply copy the solution and put it into your own code. Because if something then turns around and goes wrong with that, you're not going to understand really what is going on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. The way I always describe it is like, imagine not understanding what you're copying and pasting. You're just copying and pasting, but at the end of the day, you're copying a weird part of this, a weird part of this, a weird part of this. You put it together, it becomes a Frankenstein. It can still move, but it is not exactly human, right? And suddenly you decided to take one part off and the whole thing collapsed. So those things are very common, and you have to be very careful. If you don't understand the stuff, don't put it in. I think that is a very, very important practice. All right. I think, there is another question from Aditya. So Aditya asked, I want to be a full stack web developer, but my background is not related to coding at all. How can I reach my goal?
Okay, so obviously first thing is to, before you start, research what you're getting yourself in for. Have a look around at the job market, take a look at what languages are currently in demand, what is there the most jobs available for, and then from there you kind of have some direction as to where you should be going. Obviously with regards to the background, myself, I'm not from a coding background originally. I'm from automotive, but I managed to make the jump over. At the end of the day, it's all about a lot of commitment, giving up some time to really focus on studying coding and how it works, and then from there you can go on and decide which way you want to go.
Yeah, I think one of the key things is that a lot of people at Next Academy really started without coding backgrounds. Like when I'm talking about without coding background, there will be, like for you, he's from the automotive industry. We have people who are pharmacists, doctors as well. We have people who are waiters, right? We have high school students, dropouts. What else? We have, we have engineers, we have journalists, we have graphic designers, we have all sorts of people who really, and a lot of them, actually most of them have zero coding background. And they learn to code, right? I think one of the key things is that it's definitely possible, and always remember that every single one of them, before they become a coder, they were once someone who doesn't know how to code. And I think, so long you want to actually start learning to code is no problem. You just need to put in the effort to actually go through it. Yeah. There's one question here from H.C. Wong. H.C. Wong asked, In Malaysia, there are so many programming languages. Which one will become hotter in the near future?
This one is quite a difficult question to answer. At the moment, I mean, one of them that is becoming quite popular is the Dart programming language. So over the past couple of years, there was a framework that was introduced for mobile apps called Flutter, and it follows Google's material design principles. So that language is actually becoming very popular and getting higher in demand. But it's very hard to tell. It's very hard to tell. Things can change very quickly with regards to languages. It just depends on what that language brings to the table, how easy it is for people to pick up from another language. That obviously plays a huge part in it as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to languages, it's always the war of languages, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, this is going to be popular, that is going to be hot. I think right now, one of the key things that people look into, one of the reasons why Python is always being brought up is because of the versatility. For example, right, you want to build an app, you can use Python. You want to do AI, Python is a language. You want to do data science, Python is a language, right? And Python has opened up a lot of I think Python has opened up a lot of different fields, right, for you to get into eventually. So, but at the same time, you have other languages like Java. Java is still being used in a lot of systems, for example. You have all sorts of stuff, right? So I think regardless what is important is to understand the use case, right? And sometimes, like what Matt said, there will be a lot of new technology that's coming up, popping up right, left, and center. I think one key thing is really take a step back. Don't run after trends, right? Because it's good to run after trends, but trends really do change pretty fast, right? It's not too long ago when Flutter wasn't around and Flutter is here already. I don't know, 1 year down the road, it could be something different altogether. So you just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think just to add on to the Python thing as well, like obviously, each language has its pros and cons, and there's obviously, different reasons for people choosing different languages. But I think like one of the great things is obviously Python is very versatile, like she said, like Audrey said. So that's why like obviously it's a good one to learn. So you broaden your spectrum of career choices, and also as well, it's a very beginner friendly language. It reads like English, so if you have a good comprehension of the English language, it's very easy to understand what it's doing.
Yeah. Okay. Mohammed Azriq asked, which one should I learn first? Should I learn Java, HTML, or C++?
Okay, so for this one, for me, my personal opinion is to learn HTML first. So even though it's not technically considered as a programming language, at the end of the day, it's still code. It's still somewhere to start. And the great thing is HTML, you have something to see. So for a lot of the languages, you're going to be writing code and outputting things to your terminal. So it's a little bit more difficult to visualize what is actually happening. Whereas if you're using HTML, it's much easier to see what is actually going on underneath the hood. Yeah.
Okay, so this is always the really big question that everyone asks: which one should I learn first and stuff like this? Actually, there are a lot of ways to look at it. Number one is like what he said, like what Matt said. Are you a visual person, right? If you're a visual person, starting with HTML and CSS would be really good. Why? Because you want to first start off, learning to interact with the computer visually first, right? When you start going to different programming languages, such as Python, Java, C++, then it can be more conceptual, right? Sometimes it's not easily visualized. So I think a lot of people are more visual. Like for example, I'm more visual. So starting HTML, CSS was the first step for me. And then eventually, once I get comfortable with that, get comfortable with the computer, then I go into things like JavaScript, Python, and so on and so forth. So I think that's one way to go about it. Okay, so let me just so there's this Yobin asked, can I build my app by myself, and how much time is needed?
Yeah, definitely you can build your app by yourself. There are a lot of obviously freelance developers out there as well. They work for themselves, they build things by themselves. Um, so yeah, definitely it's possible to build by yourself. How much time needed? That one obviously depends on you
Depends on
partly.
you. Yeah.
Um, in terms of being capable to build a app, as you can see, you can build your app in just 10 weeks. Okay. So yeah, it's possible to build apps within 10 weeks. So, you know, yeah, 10 weeks at a minimum, I would say, possibly longer. Obviously, depending on how big the app is that you're actually deciding to build plays a big part in how much time it's going to take as well.
Yeah. So yes, you can build the app by yourself. Here's a story for you. So one of our students, his name is Johnson. I think back then when he first started wanting to get into the tech entrepreneur route, right? He actually didn't learn to code. So what he did was that he spent money, I think about 70 or 100K, right? Getting someone to build it for him. But the problem is this, the idea that he had couldn't actually be solved by the normal technology stacks, right? But he didn't know. So he paid 100K, and I think and every time the person would go like, oh, you only need 3 months, 3 months and whatnot. And in the end, he waited for 2 years before it got launched. So when he launched this, his app, it couldn't even get past the login page. And he was really angry. So in the end, he decided to actually learn how to code himself and coded up his own app after that by himself. So as mentioned, it really depends on how tough is your app, how complex is your app. His app is actually really complex. So I think for him, he took around like 3 months to actually to build the whole entire MVP for himself. But for apps that are very simple, we also have students who build apps within the weekends, just 2 days, and the app is totally up. So all those things are possible. But I think first thing first, it's all about the complexity of the app and how proficient you are. All right. So are you ready for the next one?
Yep, let's go.
Okay. So someone asked, HS Wong asked, okay, to make Android apps, should we go for Java, Kotlin, or Flutter? So let me just explain to everyone. So to create an Android apps, there are a few ways to create it. One is that you create a hybrid app, right? Another way is that we call it a native app, meaning that it's purely on Android, right? Hybrid apps means that it could be on Android, iOS, and whatnot. So yeah, so to make an Android app, right? Maybe we start off with, what do you think? Hybrid versus native?
So yeah, I mean, like personally, I prefer hybrid. You kill two birds with one stone. You only have to write things once. You don't have to write it twice. So that's obviously the positive side of that. On the other hand, there are some limitations with hybrid apps in that, when you're writing your code, you need to be aware of certain things don't work on Android, certain things don't work on iOS. So you have to handle those situations yourself.
Yeah.
And then obviously another limitation is some of the native features are still not fully supported by the hybrid apps. So, depending on the situation, I guess you kind of have to look at what you're building, do your research. Do you have access to that with the hybrid? If you do, go the hybrid route, because it's going to cut down your development time and make things come to fruition much quicker. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to be kind of like a devil's advocate here, right? So yes, with hybrid apps, what happens is that the development time is definitely a lot shorter, right?
Yeah.
So you get to build once and you can appear in two or three two different places, right? But with native apps means that if you build only for Android, then it's only for Android. iOS, then it's only for iOS. But here is something I think very interesting that a friend of mine who actually builds mobile app, and when I was looking at his newsfeed, he's always talking about why hybrid app, even though the development time is really good, really short, is not always the best when it comes to maintenance. So those are the trade-offs that you would need to think about. But if you want to get everything up and running really fast, yes, a hybrid app will be good. And as time goes on and you realize that, a lot of people are coming on board and whatnot, then you can start thinking about, building it natively. So to make sure that the maintenance of the app is doable. Okay, so there is another question here. Okay, Feng Yuan asked, how does coding benefit a child's education? So let me just repeat that. How do you think coding can benefit a child?
Okay, so obviously one thing with programming is a lot about having a problem and solving a problem. So first thing is obviously teaching them how to, have problem solving skills, how to break things down into smaller steps and tackle them bit by bit. Okay, so like obviously for kids, building games is a great way for them to learn. You can do that with code. Obviously, kids love games. It's a fun way for them to learn how to build things and do this whole logical building of how things work. Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a lot of benefits when it comes to coding. At the same time, I think these days what is very interesting is that we are trying to get our all the new generation to actually learn coding because of the industry 4.0. Because if you don't learn to code today, in the future you'll be obsolete. There will be no jobs for you. Everything will be automated and so on and so forth. It's really sometimes it's a fear-based thing, and you see that every part of the world, everyone is trying to get their children to learn to code. I think learning to code, definitely there is benefits, right? Obviously, every time when we learn a new skill, there is benefit. But I also think that when it comes to coding, we need to understand how can we set up our children for success. And one of the key things when you want to learn to code, a few things you really need. Number one is comprehension. You need to be able to understand the problem, right? And I think sometimes some of the challenges that I see right now is that English, Malay, Chinese, whatever it is, we do see students even have problems expressing themselves or have problems reading a passage and understanding things, right? If they can't even get past this, it's going to be very tough for them to code. So I think the whole thing about which language is important and stuff like this, I think we really need to actually sort that out, because comprehension or understanding problem statements, right, is so important, but we are not looking into it, right? That's one thing. And number two is critical thinking or problem solving skills. I think those kind of problem solving skills doesn't always need to be via code. It could be via your everyday things, right? Everyday life. How do you solve problems? And I think those two things are very crucial, if you want the kid or you want the child to be successful in coding. And yeah, it will definitely benefit the child, right, in terms of preparing them for the future. But we also need to know that coding in itself have fundamentals that we need to look into, right, if you want to set the child up for success. So yeah, okay, so we also have another question. For example, from Hari Haran. So Hari Haran asks, how easy is it to learn to code? How easy is it to learn to code? Okay, that's to you.
So I don't think there's really anything in life that is easy. There are certainly things that are easier, and you can make things easier for yourself.
Yeah.
How easy is it learning to code? Obviously, it's a very subjective question, so it depends on you yourself as a person as well. If you are willing to put in the time, willing to put in the effort, work hard, doesn't matter. Even if you find it difficult at first, persevere, keep trying. I think anybody is capable of learning to code. If you can learn to speak, you can learn to walk, you can learn to talk. It's just the same thing. But instead of, talking to other people, you're talking to a computer. So you just have to learn the language that the computer is going to understand.
Yeah, so I think maybe you could share, one period where you look at code and you got so frustrated and then after that you realize, oh, it's actually it's easy to understand. Yeah.
So obviously one thing is getting into the whole programmer's mindset. So obviously when you first start out, you're not wired to think that way. So you look at the problems and you approach them in maybe not the correct way that you should. So like for me personally, when I first started out, JavaScript was a big trip up for me. It was just very difficult to look at the problem and really break it down and look at it from a new direction. So I was very narrow-minded like that. But eventually I kept trying. Even if I struggled, I would get help, get the answers. Then I would look back at what had been done and try to understand it better. And once you do that, then you start to realize where you're looking at things wrongly and the right way you should be looking at it. And that's where you really start to then pick up coding and programming pretty quickly.
I think one key thing that I hear from you is identifying trends, identifying patterns, right? Yeah. So I think one key thing when it comes to learning to code is start looking for patterns as opposed to looking at each problem as an individual unique set of problems. So I can't remember an example, but let's just say there's an error. You have 1,000 bugs just appear, right? You can solve all the bugs one by one. You can squash all those bugs one by one, or you realize you see a certain pattern that, hey, because of one particular thing, and this one particular thing caused 900 of the bugs, right? So okay. So the moment when you catch the trend, as opposed to solving 1,000 bugs or computer bugs, now you're solving only 101 computer bug, right? Yeah. So I think one key thing is looking at patterns would definitely help you. But yeah, it's not always, everything in life is not always the easiest, but you just need to persevere. There's no such thing as easy in life.
Is it
easy to make money?
No such thing.
Is it easy to it's easy to be lazy?
That's about the only thing that is easy, being lazy.
Okay. HC Wong asked us, I find the way colleges teach programming is not really ideal. They teach programs using loops and stuff like this, but they don't teach how to use it for real world application. So do you think, what do you think? Do you think self-learning is better, or should I go to college, or what other alternatives are there?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's many different approaches to learning programming. Definitely universities, they focus more on the theory and teaching you how the concepts are, but not really how to apply them. Online, there's obviously a lot of material. Usually they will give you a lot of challenges to complete, which will teach you how to use the things individually, but not necessarily all together. And then there's boot camps, on the other hand, which will teach you on a more hands-on process. So you will still be taught the theory, but maybe just on an introductory level, not in great detail. But from what you've been taught on the theory, it's enough for you to go and try it for yourself. And then that's where you can actually see how these things work in a real situation and how to apply these things to a real application.
Yeah, so I think different things have different purposes, right? For example, boot camps, Next Academy coding boot camps are primarily very focused on building things, right? For universities, for example, they are very focused on you having understand how the whole computer work, right? How did it all come about? The different computer paradigms. So it's very different. I think the best combination, actually, truth to be told, right? It's really depending on what you want to do, right? So for example, we have students who come to Next Academy Bootcamp. They learn the practical part of coding, building apps and stuff like this, and they love coding. Then they decided to go to university and learn the theoretical part of things, understanding how everything first came about, right? And what other programming paradigms are there. And what happens is that the time that they have in university becomes so much richer, so much more meaningful because they can code already in the first place. So I think if it's really dependent on what you want, right? Do you want to start building things, or are you someone who would love to investigate and learn more and understand more about the whole coding world? Yeah, so it really boils down to you what you want. All right. So now to the next question. So before that, guys, if you have any questions or whatsoever, feel free to ask us those questions. We are here to answer you guys, right? And you guys too at Instagram, please just pop those questions in. All right. So now next one, by Loshin, right? How do you understand coding better? Did we answer that? Okay. So by Loshin, how do we understand coding better?
For this one, I think it's kind of the same like anything. Like, how do you learn? How do you play a sport better? How do you learn how to play a sport better? So obviously, one thing is practice makes perfect. The more you do something, the easier it is. Not to say easier, but the better you will become at it. The more you'll understand what you need to do and what you don't. I guess, mainly it's just keep trying it, continue to build things. What else to say about it?
Yeah, I think those are like core things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, keep trying, continue to build things. I think it's how our brains are being wired. So I actually read a little bit about, why certain people, how certain people become really good at something, right? It's all about your brains, right? How often you fire that neuron. So you notice something, right? You notice if you learn, let's say if you learn a language today and you don't speak it for one and you're pretty good at it, right? You spend like 3 months learning a language, and then you go out there and talk to people in a new language. That's pretty good. And then suddenly 1 year later you don't speak a single word at all. Do you think you still remember everything? No, you won't, right? You're not going to be very familiar, really. The same thing goes with driving as well, right? For example, back in those days, I drive every single day. And yeah, that's really good. When I park my car, I just need to turn in once and that's settled. And these days, I only drive my car once a week. Once a week. Today, if you ask me to drive into a car park, parallel parking or anything, it takes me 3-4 turns before I get into the freaking car park. So I think it's very much similar to coding as well. It's all about your brain muscles. You need to use it over and over and over again. All right. So guys, as mentioned, ask questions, right? Feel free to ask those questions because if not, we'll get really lonely over here. But in the meantime, let's move on to the next one. So Anas asked, what are the key points to improve yourself in coding? Actually, they are quite similar, but let's just answer that as well. What are some of your key points when you want to improve yourself in coding?
Yeah, so obviously one thing is, again, practice makes perfect. Keep doing it. The more you do it, the better you'll get. Second thing is look at other people's code. See how other people do things. Sometimes it can be quite refreshing to see how someone else or a senior does something similar to what you're doing, because you'll see like how the experience changes the approach they take to solving things. Another thing as well is probably, read up on the programming languages themselves, find news on the latest things that they're coming out with. Programming grows very quickly, new things get released very quickly. And you can find that the way you built something previously may now be done different because of a new feature that came out.
Yeah, things changes really fast in the programming world, by the way. So always keep a lookout. Fundamentals are very important. Please build your fundamentals well so that in the future when you want to implement new stuff, you actually understand what's happening. Don't just copy and paste. Okay, you don't want to build a monster. You want to build a proper app. Because if you build a monster, I tell you, you will very likely need to rebuild the whole app later on, and that happens very, very often. All right, so we from HC Wong asked a few things. One very interesting. Is it easy to earn money by making apps and sell them on Google Play?
I can't speak from personal experience, but I don't think it's easy to make money. Obviously, your apps need to be need to have some value in terms of what they do.
Yeah.
It needs to be either solving a problem or providing a service to someone enough for them to use it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people are not going to pay for something that they're not going to use.
H.C. Wong, I think one key thing is this, right? Every idea you think of, can you just go on Play Store and see if there's a free version? Because there most likely is a free version these days. So I think those are some of the key things to think about, right? There are I just read something. In China, 1 million new apps appear every single year. 1 million new apps, right? I tell you, at this rate, it's very easy for you to actually you have an idea and you go on the app store and you realize that, hey, someone else is doing it. So what you notice is, I think this is in the realm of marketing, is that people would actually do a freemium model where you first come in, it's for free, you get to use it for free. And then when you are really attached to it and you are sticky towards the app, then they'll ask you, do you want to, upgrade to a premium, right? $1, $1.99, right? Stuff like that. Then it's easier for you to actually monetize. But immediately, straight off the bat, and you're asking people to pay immediately, it's going to be quite tricky because there are just too many free apps out there. Yeah, that's life. HC Wong also asked the next question. Do you learn the whole documentation when you're learning a language, right? So let me just tell you, for some of you guys who don't know what documentation is, for programming, be it you have a new framework or anything, there is something what we call documentation, where you can read it to understand how the things work, right? And then you can read through it and then implement it later on. So his question is, do you need to read the whole thing, right, before you even do you need to read the whole thing when you start learning something new?
No, I don't think you do. You need to have a good understanding or a good idea of what the framework, what the language is trying to do. Obviously, read up on the fundamentals, your basics of like variables, loops, functions, things like that. They're all the very basic and essential things that you're going to use every day. But as for the rest of the stuff, no. Like one of the things that we generally do as a programmer is we go and look for something when we need it. Yeah. So you remember the core things, but obviously trying to remember an entire documentation is almost impossible, if not impossible. So you only really go back to look for things as and when you need to use them.
Okay, the question for you is this. Do you need to memorize the entire English dictionary before you start writing English? No, right? So you just need to know a certain, I can't remember the set amount of words you need to know to actually have a decent conversation and to actually start writing. And as and when you need, extra words or better words or flamboyant words, right? Then you go to the dictionary and look for the new words. So yeah, you don't need to have everything, right? You just need to have what it needs to get you started first. Okay, so guys, as mentioned, pop in those questions, right? And we will answer them. You maybe should check, right? Do you actually have questions on your feed? Because I have questions here. Okay, so Cynthia Veronica, hi Cynthia. Okay, ask, besides e-commerce, can you provide examples on what other industry uses their apps in their business? Hi Cynthia. Sorry. Okay, so Cynthia asks, besides e-commerce, how else can you use an app, right? What kind of app that people build for other businesses?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Aside from e-commerce, what other apps can you build for businesses?
So you can build things like accounting software. Obviously, things like that. Nowadays, they can be hosted on the web. You don't need to have them on a computer anymore. You can build your product store, your HR system, like Audrey just said. There's a lot of things you can build for your business with apps.
Like, for example, you can build, I'm just thinking of my head right now. You can build so many things. For example, you can build an entire trading algorithm by yourself, right, for your business. Or for example, if you like to buy stuff on Amazon, right? Amazon, Black Friday sales is coming and you want to create a price checker. Yes, you can do it. Really, with coding, you can do it. What else, right? What else that companies, businesses can do? Okay, you use Twitter, businesses use Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, right? So what they can do is that they can build something. Whenever a customer complain or anything, they can build something that takes all this comment and put it in their web page, so that their marketing team can monitor. Yeah. So really, like, if you could think of any automation that your computer can use, you can use your computer to do it, or your handphone to do it. For example, book a Grab or stuff like this, or build a Google Maps or stuff like this. If you can think of it, yes. If it's related to the phone or related to the computer, you need to code, right? So it's not just e-commerce. E-commerce is only one part of it, but there's so much more opportunity, right? Yeah, like, if you want to know what is the best rates, best exchange rates and stuff like that, you can code it out, and get information, code it out, and put it in an app for yourself even. So those are a lot of things that you can. There are a lot of things that you can do with it. I hope that answered your question, Cynthia. Yep. Okay, so next one, right? Okay, Sonja asked, what differentiates a good coder and a mediocre coder? So what differentiates a good coder and a mediocre coder?
So I guess, when you write code, there's always a million and one ways to build something. You can always take many different approaches. A mediocre coder would build it and get the end result that they want, but maybe they give their code to someone else. It doesn't make any sense. A good coder would be very clean code. They achieve the outcome that they want, and they can hand the code to someone else, and they'll be able to understand exactly what it's doing, where, why, how, and very well commented for someone else to be able to read and understand.
Yeah. So good coder, mediocre coder. I think when you ask a lot of people, I think aside from clean code, right, and code that can be understood, I think that's very, very important, by the way. You have no idea how many stories I've heard that people come up to me and say, hey, you know what, Audrey, I've been looking for programmers and stuff like this to maintain my old app. And then after that, he came over and said, hey, you know what, Audrey, this senior programmers or whatnot asked me to rebuild the entire app. I said, oh, why? Oh, yeah, because they don't understand what the previous programmer is building. And that is very, very important, because if you don't do clean code, if you don't do proper documentation, the next person who you leave, the next person who come by would find it very, very hard to understand. In fact, they would need to sit down and review the entire code, try to understand what's happening. So for them is, oh my goodness, for the same amount of time me looking at this person's code, I could very well build something from scratch and probably be even faster, right, in delivering the project. So that is definitely one thing. Another thing I think is resourcefulness and problem solving, right? I think problem solving skills is definitely something that's very important, right? You'll be seeing a lot of things in the world. You want to think about, how can you solve them better? How can you solve them faster, right? Those are some of the key things to think about. And really, like, people, when you get into the job market, people are always looking for problem solvers. And if you want to know what differentiates a normal coder and a really good coder, problem solving skills as well. Okay, so how many more questions do we have? We have 15 more minutes, guys. 15 more minutes. Throw in those questions and we'll answer them. In the meantime, there is Nick. So Nick asks, what can you do with code after you learn it?
So obviously, what you can do after you learn it, possibilities are endless. So we just went through some of them then. So obviously, building software for your business. You can build a app that can provide a service for people. Look at Grab, look at things like GoGet. Their entire business model, revolves around their app and their technology. Yeah. Something that's very common nowadays is bots. So obviously you can implement chatbots. Yeah. Artificial intelligence is becoming huge even in the chatbot side of things as well. So nowadays, you go on Facebook, you send a message to the business, and you feel like you're talking back to someone, talking to a real person, but actually it's just a bot that is replying to you a lot of the time. So you can build games as well. Games is another thing that you can build. Obviously, depending on the type of games you're building, web-based games, small, simple games are probably much easier to build. Whereas, full mobile games probably require a lot more work and 3D engines to complete.
So I just put a link in. It's nextmy.co/Halloween. So it's actually built by him. Yeah. So you see, it looks like a very simple game, right? We just wanted to get onto the festive season, right? Because it was Halloween, get everyone to play about it. And in fact, people play and people won prizes out of it. So for example, we built games like this to just create an awareness of what, coding can do, right? And imagine for your business, you want to create, viral acts, for example, viral games, right? Imagine people can play this game and then win. I don't know if you're a bubble tea shop, right? People can play the game, and then the one who actually is the fastest can win a free bubble tea at your shop. Things like that, right? Simple, but it's fun, right? And here's another story. I really love this story. It's done by a student. So he loved figurines, right? And figurines are always what is it called? We call it like they're unlimited edition figurines. And so for him, he has been hunting for this figurine, but he has always, the moment it appears, the figurine will be bought. So imagine you always need to go in front of the computer and refresh the page every time. But no one is going to have all the time in the world to refresh the entire thing, right? So what happened to him was that he actually, after he learned to code, he actually built a bot that helps him automatically refresh the page, track if the item is on sale, and then alert him once the item is in the market. Because it is so rare, it is a very rare item, but he built a bot to actually automate everything for him. And these are simple things that you can do for yourself as well. So yeah, what do you do with coding after you learn it? I think there are so many things that you can do with it. So I think this is one thing where people have, right? Like after, people don't really know what coding can be done. So you need to listen to all these examples of what people have done with coding, right? Then after that, when you learn to code, you realize, oh, I want to build so many things, right? That would be a very exciting time for you. All right. So there is the next question. This is a very interesting question. Marcus asked, will coding ever become obsolete?
So this is probably more of an opinion than it is facts, but for me, I don't think it ever will. If you look at how things have changed over probably just the past 10 years, would you have thought 10 years ago that you would be using an app to book a taxi to go from A to B? The way things have changed and the fact that everything we do in our lives nowadays revolves around technology in some way or another, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So, it's very, very unlikely in this generation or the next few generations to come that it will become obsolete.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I foresee that the world is going to be using code a lot more, right? Maybe code in the future might become simpler and simpler. If you look at code back in those days, you look at it and you go like, I don't understand what it's saying. It's like weird curly braces, everything, all the weird stuff. And then if you take a look at Python, for example, if you look at the code, you actually can read it like English, right? And for me, I think maybe in the future, it just becomes easier to read it as English or as a certain language. So while I don't think coding will become obsolete, I think it will likely become easier to learn, right? Easier to learn, yeah. So HT Wong asked also another question. Is it hard to break into the programmer's job market, right? Can I just learn some basic syntax, build a portfolio, and throw it into GitHub and get the job?
I don't think so. Generally, most companies are going to require you to go through an interview. And usually the interviews will involve you doing coding in front of them. Obviously there's something called the whiteboard test. Sometimes they will ask you not to actually go and code something, but to actually write the process of how you would do it in code on a whiteboard. On the other hand, there are the tests where they will actually ask you to build things, write algorithms. So, just learning the basics is not going to be enough. You need to obviously keep practicing it, get better at it, get more involved, because you might be able to solve the solutions and get the answers what they want, but they will also look at how you've done it. Is it the right way to do it? Is it a clean way and a way that they're going to see, that's going to work with the way that they work?
Yeah. Things have changed a lot. Last time when people are looking for a junior developer, right, they'll be like, oh, if the person knows HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right, okay, no problem, right? Then now, a junior developer will need to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, also need to build an entire backend, also need to understand SQL, right? That was just not too long ago. Today, people will be like, junior developer need to know React, right? Junior developer need to know all these fancy new technology stacks that are happening. Honestly speaking, the bar for junior developers these days are becoming higher and higher. So just purely learning some syntax and showing your portfolio might be a bit tough, right? You might need to know more than just that, right? That's how the world works, right? Things changes so fast. You need to respond really, really fast as well. Okay, so for the next question, Esther asks, what will I learn about coding at Next Academy?
Okay, so at Next Academy, obviously it depends which course you take. If you go for the front end, obviously you'll be learning how to build what you see, so the user interface side of things. If you go for React, then you'll be learning how to build reusable components and speed up your development time on front end. So obviously React is a framework that was built by Facebook. Facebook is built on React as well. And it follows the concept of a single page application. So, you're only actually ever seeing one page being displayed. You're just changing the contents in it that are being shown. For backend, obviously we teach Python. You'll be learning how to build algorithms, how to build servers using the Flask framework, as well as manipulating data within a SQL database. It doesn't matter which course you take, the learning style is the same. We teach you the theory on a introductory level, and then we give you enough to get you going, and then you'll be doing hands-on challenges, you'll be doing group exercises, and then obviously if you take the full stack in your last 2 weeks, you'll be learning everything that you've learned over the past 8 weeks, and then building your own app in a group.
So basically, firstly, build a website. Then if you go to the 10 weeks course, build an app. I think that's the way,
in a nutshell, yeah.
In a nutshell, websites and apps, right? And basically you could build a lot of things, anything that you could think of. For example, some of the interesting ones. If you ever have problem deciding where to eat during lunch, you can build a program that helps you decide, help you decide where to eat after that, right? Or examples, if you ever want to play a game of hide and seek, these are all things that students have built before. If you want to ever play a game of chasing and running after people, so a student did like a map, right, Google Map, and they all randomly put zombies on the roads, and and you are asked to run to a certain destination while avoiding all the zombies, right? So things like that. The students have actually built that before. What other interesting things? Like, we also have students building, for example, a speed reader, right? If you actually download the speed reader, like it's a Google Chrome extension, if you use a Google Chrome extension, the words will start disappearing, so you need to read really fast. So these are some really interesting fun stuff that people have actually built, right? So and you can actually build a lot of stuff. Anything that you could think of. When you know how to build those things, you can experiment with a lot of stuff. Even AI. Like we have students who build this thing where you upload the image, it will tell you if there are products that shouldn't be appearing there. For example, if you say that you do not want tobacco, it will identify that there's a tobacco product in there, and it will say that this picture is cancelled. Right? So things like that. There are all sorts of opportunities out there. It's really based on your imagination. Okay, so Ilham asked, what does it take to build SaaS? A SaaS means service as a software. So I'm guessing you're building a software that will require people to pay you, right? And will next teach us the necessary stuff.
Okay, so in terms of software as a service, I can't speak from experience in terms of like how long it would take to actually build something like that. But here at Next, we give you enough to be able to go ahead and build something like that yourself. By the end of the 10 weeks, you have enough knowledge and enough, exposure to coding to be able to leave here and go and build whatever you want. Whether you decide to, go and find a job somewhere or start your own business, you have enough and you have enough skills to be able to go and do that.
Yeah. For example, like right now, one of the students he's already a graduate. He is involved in building restaurant software, right? So yeah, those are some examples, right? He's involved in because he ran a restaurant and he knows what a restaurant need, and now he's involved in building a restaurant software for restaurants. Yeah, and the thing is it gets really tricky to understand what to be able to really answer you that, because I don't know what is your software about, right? And how technical, how complex it can be. But I think a lot of students actually did attempt to build softwares even, and so on and so forth, and they managed to do it. So I think yours should be fine too. I hope so. If you have any more questions, you can write those things in. Yeah, but yeah, I think we teach the necessary stuff for you to actually build a lot of stuff. In fact, a lot of our students have, GoGet, for example. If you have not used GoGet, go try it out. Things like this, right? They build the entire software behind the scenes for the users to use it. They also build it for the go-getters to use it as well, and it's all built by our students. So those are some of the key things for you to take a look at. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Ilham. All right. There's one more interesting one, right? It's by Kelly. What's the difference between Next Academy courses and I'm actually thinking about sending my children to learn to code, right? So what's the difference between learning at Next Academy or learning at quite a number of kids coding courses out there?
So obviously, Next Academy, we focus on teaching you on hands-on, but you need to have like your basics there in the first place. So you need to be like fairly proficient at using a computer, and navigating around the web and your computer. Some of the kids courses that I'm aware of, they don't teach you so much on coding. But what they will actually do is teach you on building logical things that a computer will understand. So they pre-build some of the stuff for you, but they will give the kids a user interface where they can kind of drag and drop the commands to create some kind of program to run.
Yeah. So I think the big difference is here, like for kids coding courses, I think it's very discovery based. So in other words, it helps the kid build interest. It helps the kid discover what coding is all about, right? But when you come to Next Academy courses, I always say that we are beyond discovery, meaning that people who come here are really serious about learning to code. People who come here are serious, even if they have zero coding background. After they learn to code, they want to go out there to get a job, right? So it's definitely a lot more intensive and a lot more immersive. So I think if your kid is young and whatnot, I do agree. Let them go to the kids coding schools, right? To understand what coding is all about, to actually start thinking about, you know, if they love to code or not, right? And when they are ready for it, do come by Next Academy, because we will bring them to the next level. The next level meaning that I've seen students, right, right after high school, you know, join us and get jobs as coders, right? Literally get jobs as coders. Haven't even gone to college or universities. Um, so yeah, so you can imagine what's the difference between like for us, as mentioned, we are beyond discovery. So if you are serious about coding, if you are serious about, say, building your own tech startup, right, literally building a whole app for yourself, or really, you know, serious about getting a job as a coder, then and you're willing to put in the effort, then Next Academy would be the place for you. Yeah. So I think we are 2 more minutes away. So I think that's pretty much it. You know, we can just, if you have any questions, just, you know, we'll just take one more question. Just pop it right in. But in the meantime, I will ask you, what are some of the advice that you have for people who wants to learn to code?
Yeah. So first thing I would suggest is to, obviously, like I said earlier, survey the market, see which jobs are the most in demand. You know, look at what appeals to you. From there, you should be able to have a good idea of, you know, what programming languages you're going to need, what skill set you're going to need to go for those kind of jobs.
Yeah.
Then, you know, obviously the commitment is high. You know, if you're committing to learning to code, it's going to require a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of time. So depending on your position, if you're someone that's, you know, looking for a career change, you know, try it out first. You know, there's plenty of stuff online for you to go ahead and try. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of, you know, tutorials how to build things. Try those first, see if you like it, if you enjoy it. You know, it kind of makes the decision for you as to whether you want to, you know, choose this career path or not. And then, yeah, if this is what you decide you want to do, then, you know, hello, we're at Next Academy. Come join us.
Come join us, guys. So yeah, I think there is no more questions from the Facebook gang as well as the Instagram gang. So I think that's pretty much it. Matt, thank you so much for your time today.
No problem.
It has been an amazing 1 hour. And thanks so much for all the questions, guys. There's a lot of questions from all over the place. And hope to see you next time. Catch up again. Bye, guys. Say bye there too. Bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah.